So this week, Sony held a fairly brief press conference at the Paris Games Week, and I'll be honest with you, I had no idea what Paris Games Week was or even that it even existed until I heard that Sony was running a press conference there.
Paris, Japan? What?
I have no idea. Anyway, there was a press conference. They streamed it online, and they showed a whole bunch of cool stuff.
They did. They really did. So I actually have notes. It's like almost I came prepared.
Most unlike you.
I know. Don't tell anyone. But I wanted to get down, what I saw because I have a PS4 Pro, and I was really there for two games, which they did show. So we'll get to it. First of all, they opened up with a game called Ghost of Tsushima, which when it first started, I thought Onimusha. And I don't know if you ever played the Onimusha games. They're done by Capcom. Almost a precursor to the Souls games. It's like this for third-person action. There's some stealth elements to it as well. But it was a samurai game, basically. This one by Sucker Punch Games. And, man, it looked really cool. And I think that was the debut trailer for it. So no one's ever seen anything about this yet. I am very interested to see what comes next. But it looked real pretty and had really pretty trees. But it was a very quick cutscene. So, not much to talk about other than the fact that this game, and if you know what I'm talking about when I say Onimusha, you'll be as excited as I am because those were awesome games. So that's Ghost of Tsushima. Next up, they had Jim Ryan come out and talk about the power of the PlayStation 4, and only spoke for about 10 minutes, and then it was sizzle reel game after game after game after game after game. So I just wrote some notes on each ones that came out. The first one they showed was called Concrete Genie, which I dubbed a super weird wall drawing game. So, you're playing as this character who has a giant paintbrush and he's painting on the walls. And what it looks like is that, he's doing it from a template. You can pick a whole bunch of templates, parts of a template, like a head, a body, feet, legs, whatever. You choose that and you paint that on the wall. But it looks like those paintings will help you solve puzzle. It's like a puzzle game.
Yeah, it's like the paintings come to life, right?
Yeah,
and we'll help
very
you
colorful.
Or do stuff. Yeah, it was
very colorful.
Weird,
It's super weird. Yeah. Super weird. But I mean, Sony. But I'm interested. That piqued my interest. It looked very pretty, and I'd like to know more about it. Again, they didn't show too much, other than it's coming next year, 2018 release date. The next one they showed was a game called Erica. And this looks like something that plays very similar to the Heavy Rain series. I don't know if you saw that. It's like an interactive movie, basically. So, it looks gorgeous, right? But it has these moments where, on screen, where you pick a choice while you're in the situation that you're doing. So, I think at one point there was this guy who seemed to be the confronting the title character. I don't know if that's true or not, but, he had a knife up to Erica, and there was an option to trust that person or slash that person. So it's like two very different choices. Yeah. So, I would imagine that depending on the outcome, it changes your game up. But, it looked very interesting. And again, very, very good looking game. Very good looking game. So, unfortunately, again, not a lot of gameplay shown.
Right.
But what they did show for gameplay was a slew of like a dozen PSVR titles. So that's what they got into next. And it was very quick succession of gameplay of these VR titles. So now I've played Rift. I don't have PSVR. I would love to own one. They are not cheap.
Nope.
And my next purchase is an Xbox One X. So sorry, PSVR, you're going to have to wait. And I won't go through the full list of the games that they showed. I don't think anything that was too crazy that jumped out at me. A couple of things. There was Bout of Blood, which looked like a space boat pirate game, which looked kind of cool. There was something called Stifled, which was this black and white art game. The art was beautiful. It was all black and white, though. And I find that when you're doing games like that, you can make them look a little nicer because you don't have to worry about a lot of different effects. And that suits the needs of the PSVR very nicely, I think. So they also had something called Transference, which looked like a really super creepy horror game, and that's what you want with PSVR. We want a VR game. I mean, not what you want, but that's going to show it off.
It's not what I want. I got
to going to show it off, right?
I'm not a fan of horror games, and a horror game in VR, it just sounds like a nightmare to me.
Right? We played Elite Dangerous in VR.
Yeah.
And you even warned me. You're like, the first time I ever played it, you're like, okay, just don't go crazy to start off with, right? You gotta get your balance and your bearings. Oculus Rift on PC, Elite Dangerous, very beautiful looking game, best looking VR game I've ever seen, right? And here's me like, it's fine. I yank the joystick back and do a barrel roll. Like, I had to sit down for a second. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sweating. So yeah, a horror game in VR could be detrimental to your pants.
Not for
but it looked interesting. So they had Ultra Wings, Pilot Wings. They had Ultra Wings, which looked like Pilot Wings. Right, I gave
Pilot
one
Wings
away.
in VR.
Yeah. Right. And then something called Eden Tomorrow, which actually looked like it had the best production value out of all the games I saw. So it's kind of a fantasy kind of game. And again, these were anywhere between 10 and 20 second snippets, so unfortunately it didn't give you much there. But
well, it's always tough to show off VR games when you're not in VR, right? It's very difficult to be able to get a real sense of what the game is.
Yeah.
And so much of VR is the experience of being there, because graphically the games tend to be not as taxing and not as advanced, because of just the processing required for VR.
Yeah.
And so when you look at a trailer for some of these VR games, they don't always give the best impression,
right?
Because you can't really, in a trailer, give you the real sense of what the game is going to be like.
Very true.
I mean, it's a problem that VR has, is how to market itself.
Yeah, and you, like you said, I mean, you need to feel it to know if you like it, because 90% of a VR game is the feel.
Yeah.
So then they had two more games. One was Monsters of the Deep, which is a Final Fantasy spin-off. Right, so it's Final Fantasy characters from Final Fantasy 15, I believe, fishing. So, because Square Enix, that's why.
Okay.
Then the last thing they showed a longer trailer for Blood and Truth. Now that looked pretty cool. It was like this London gangster, Bond meets, Snatch meets, a Guy Ritchie movie. I don't know, it appeared like it was an on-rails shooter. Just because, again, with the way VR is, movement is done very differently. A lot of games, things like Skyrim, right? You point to the part of the ground you want to go to, and you click a button, and there you go. So it was hard to tell the movement, but it looked kind of like on rail, but very pretty looking game. And like I said, it was, like the London gangster shooter game. So I thought that was pretty cool. So this big PSVR sizzle reel, out of the, like I said, dozen or so games, I think 2 or 3 really jumped out at me. So that was very cool.
Cool.
So after that, I think Jim Ryan came back out and said, here's, get it.
It's a fly in here.
Do you want some chopsticks there, Mr. Miyagi?
No, we're good.
Okay.
We're good. I think I got them.
Or you pushed them over to my side. Oh. Oh. Anyways. So they came out on stage and said that they had, I think it was the 6 following games have Sony exclusive
content.
Thank you. The word I was looking for. Which, some of these games I didn't realize what was the exclusive. And they like to get sneaky with that. I know, I say both companies, all companies like to do that when they say it's only on Xbox, only on PlayStation 4, where it's a multi-platform game. But they snuck in something like an additional map or a gun skin for Call of Duty that's only on the Sony. Destiny is a big one. I had a friend who asked me, I'm thinking about getting Destiny. I'm like, oh yeah, it's great. I got it for the Xbox. It's out for Xbox? Yeah, it's out for Xbox. Yeah. Right? So it's the marketing is very crazy for some of these games. Anyways, point being is they did show a couple of AAA titles here. First one being Far Cry, the new Far Cry. Man, that looks fun. It is fully co-op.
Yeah, and that was that was the point that made me much more interested in this game. I mean, I've always enjoyed the Far Cry games, but to be honest, the setting for this one didn't really appeal to me as much, so I was kind of on the fence on it. But the fact that they said now, the entire single player can be done in a co-op means we can play through it together, which really does appeal to me.
Right, and we just finished when I say just a couple of months ago, we finished the Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Yeah,
full co-op, right? Start to finish co-op. And I agree with you. The setting for the new Far Cry, I'm like, because to me Far Cry is a jungle or an exotic beach or something like that, right? And Suburbia wasn't exactly my first choice of a Far Cry game. But again, when you go through the whole thing with co-op, it opens up a lot of possibilities and a lot of fun.
Yes, for sure.
Right?
Yeah, that one should be a lot of fun.
They then showed a bit of information on the next Destiny 2 DLC, which is the Curse of Osiris.
This will be the first DLC.
Yeah, so I'm obviously looking forward to that because you and I play that.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to getting my teeth back into Destiny 2 because I haven't played it in a couple of weeks now. Obviously got some other games to play.
Yeah.
So they're stacking up. So pick and choose our battles. But when this DLC comes out, I will be there. I didn't quite get what the exclusive part was for that. So
I think they worded it such that here's a bunch of games that have exclusive content for PlayStation, even though the content we're showing might not be exclusive.
Yeah.
Right? I think that was the gist of it, was here's games that we've got some exclusives on, but they weren't really highlighting the exclusives. I must admit, this part of the conference, I was starting to get very disappointed like I was with the Microsoft Gamescom conference where they were just showing stuff we've already seen.
Yes.
Right?
True.
It was like, here's Far Cry 5, here's Destiny 2 and some of the others that are on the list. It's like we've seen these things before. At least we're kind of showing some new stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean that was a very quick video too.
Yes, it was.
And then they showed Monster Hunter World, which I mean it's fantasy third person. It's got some alternate history dinosaurs in there. Didn't really show much, other than the fact that the exclusive for this is that you can play as Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn.
Right.
Which, such an awesome game. That's such a good game. Horizon's one of my game of the year. It was earlier on in the year that I played it. But I don't want to forget that I played it. When it comes to the end of the year and we're talking about Game of the Year, that is definitely on the list. Then they showed Call of Duty World War II, this one right here. Ooh. And their exclusive was just the Time DLC, right? The first DLC pack is going to come out on Sony first. I think it's 30 days, and then it comes to the Xbox, right?
Yep.
And then the next one they showed was a game called Onrush by Codemasters. And for those who don't know, Codemasters know racing games. From the very first Colin McRae Rally right through the Dirt series, they know how to make racing games. They're generally more realistic on the side of racing games. This one just looked ridiculous, bonkers, very action-oriented. You got bikes, you got buggies, and things like that. So it might be one to watch, just because, again, it's Codemasters. They make awesome games. They really do.
Yeah.
So the last one they showed for things that were, content exclusive was Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront. And again, just like you said, not much that we haven't seen already, right?
Yeah.
So was waiting for some of the stuff, and again, I mentioned at the top of this that I was waiting for a couple of games, and then they hit us. They came back out and said, here are exclusive games for the PlayStation only.
So we got onto they got into the exclusive, and at this point in the conference, I went from sort of like, this is all stuff we've seen before, and this next section, the games they showed next, made me want to get a PlayStation.
Yeah, right?
I'll be honest with you. I was like, there's several games there that I would go buy a console for.
So the first one...
Starting with
Spider-Man.
Game looks incredible.
They showed a lot of cutscene integrated with gameplay. Right? So it was hard to tell what was cutscene, what was gameplay, because it looked so amazing. Now, obviously, some of the non-action-oriented scenes they showed, obviously cutscene with Peter Parker and Mary Jane talking and things like that, and Peter introducing people to Miles Morales, which I thought very interesting, very intriguing, right? Miles being the second Spider-Man after Peter Parker, so makes you wonder where they're even going to go with that game. By the end of the game, is part 2 going to be Miles? I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself. The first one's not out yet.
They really showcased some of the story and the fact that you're going to be following Peter Parker, and it's going to be a story about him, not just you,
right.
Going around as Spider-Man.
Right. It seems very Peter Parker story heavy, and I'm totally fine with that. Mm-hmm. They have, it's Insomniac Games. They do their research. They know games. They make some of the coolest games. Sunset Overdrive was a launch title for the Xbox One, and was awesome. I loved that game. So you played Sunset?
Yeah,
right? So I mean, and the movement in that gets me excited for Spider-Man, because I mean, they know how to do that type of gameplay.
Yeah.
And one thing I thought was very interesting is that when you start off Spider-Man, they mentioned that you're going to be fully powered pretty much. There's no unlocking new powers. You've been Spider-Man for several years, and they said right when you get into it, you're going to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Which I really love. I thought that was a really good idea. So I'm super excited. What they showed was beautiful looking. It was, witty with Spider-Man, and the action, the way they do his webbing, grabbing somebody's fist and, making him punch somebody else. They did that in the movie as well. I just think it's brilliant. I love the concept of Spider-Man. I love what you can do with his powers. I cannot wait to play this game.
Yeah.
So next up, they showed Detroit Become Human, which is shaping up to be a very interesting game.
Yeah.
This will be the 3rd demo we've seen of it, and it is a completely different demo from what we've seen in other ones. The first time we saw Detroit Become Human, it was like a hostage negotiator android trying to talk a guy down off of a roof with a hostage.
Yep.
The second one was, some outlaw gang trying to rob something.
The second showing almost seemed like a completely different game,
Right.
almost like they had changed direction on the game since we'd seen it the first time.
Right.
Which wouldn't be unheard of. But then what they showed this time was closer to the type of gameplay we saw in the
very first time. Yeah, which was a Molly-made android that appears to be coming back to somewhere where she used to work with a new memory, with a father and a daughter. And I'm going to be honest with you, the content on that was kind of uncomfortable.
Yep.
Some domestic violence going on there. So, dad beating up the kid, and it was kind of uncomfortable. Is probably the best word.
Yeah, it's implied that there's some abuse going on, and you, as in the place of the android, obviously can then decide what to do about it. That means you run away, or do you confront the father? Do you try to help the little girl escape, or what have you? But that seems to be the essence of the game, is that you are able to make choices about how to approach a situation, and you have a bunch of different choices, and they will affect the way the things play out. The story isn't set, right? Your actions
Right.
really affect the way the story will go.
Right. And FYI, if you don't help the little girl, you're a psychopath and you should put the game down. Just my opinion. I'm just saying. No, it looked interesting, and again, this is very different from what we've seen in the at least from E3.
Yeah.
Right. So next up, they showed God of War with Kratos and his beard and his son. Yes, his beard is a completely different character in this one. And it was sort of the same what we've seen already. I mean, it looks really great. These games always have. The action and the gameplay has always been really solid. At this point, I'm just like, just bring the game out. Bring the game out.
Really.
What they did show was Kratos and his magic Mjolnir-like axe. So he's got like Thor's hammer, but it's his axe. He's launching it at people and it's coming back to him. And the only thing that piqued my interest in the whole thing was when it came up and said early 2018.
Okay.
So that'd be
Yeah, that one looked pretty good. That was impressive too.
Right. So then they showed some DLC, which the Frozen Wilds for Horizon Zero Dawn. So, I mean, it looks again, if you've played Horizons, you know this game is beautiful looking. I've got it on the PS4 Pro in the...
Damn fly again. Right, keep going.
The production value is so high here. So Horizon Zero Dawn, the Frozen Wilds. I don't know if I'll be getting this, and it's not because the game's no good. Again, we just have so much to play. But I will say one thing: I'm super impressed that a year later they're still supporting this game, bringing out some DLC. I think that's very cool, and it also leads into, it's probably a good marketing tool for a Game of the Year edition where you can add some additional stuff.
Yep.
But anything that gets that game even more exposure than it already has is all right in my books. Again, if you've not played it, get that game. Once you pick up your PS4 and your, for Spider-Man, make sure you grab Horizon Zero Dawn as well. You will not be disappointed. And then 2 more games that they showed. Shadow of the Colossus, which, it didn't really show much at all. It was either a very small boy or a very large horse. I can't tell. But the proportions looked a little odd. That's just all I'm saying. But you're on a horse, and you end up climbing up these massive legs of what only could be called a fuzzy dragon. I don't know. My descriptive is there, I'm telling you. And you stab it in its back. I don't know. That's all they showed.
I think this is a remake of the original.
Right.
And it looked pretty cool.
It did. I would like to see more, though.
But yeah, for sure.
So then the last thing they showed us now, the only reason, I knew this was The Last of Us 2. I knew it going in.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And Naughty Dog, man, they don't disappoint. Those are... They know how to make a game. And Sony has a few of these devs in their back pocket that know how to make a game. And so it opens up with a gang trying to kill a couple of girls, which is awful. Just awful. And why am I smiling? Don't ask.
I don't know.
Right? To the point where, one of the young ladies is getting hit in the arm with a hammer. It's awful, but I was waiting for Joel to come out and just snap everyone's neck, So just as these guys are about, to really hurt these women, an arrow goes right through one of the guys, and in my head I'm like, yes, Joel, go! But it was not Joel. It was a young boy out of nowhere. It was not Joel. And I don't understand at all the context of that entire video. Right. It's like, Last of Us 2, it could have been any game. There was nothing that would link it to that series. And that's not a bad thing. I didn't see it coming. I will say that, again, even The Last of Us, I have the remaster, the Pro version, and it's beautiful. It really is. And this game is looking similar. Again, Naughty Dog really know how to push the system to the limits. The lighting effects, the rain effects were just beautiful. Just beautiful. But I'd be very interested to see where they're going with this. I cannot wait to see more. That is a day one purchase for me.
I found, and I'm not the only one, judging from comments online, the content in that trailer was even more disturbing than Detroit Become Human. The violence was pretty graphic.
It was,
and it was bordering on, for me, difficult to watch.
Really?
We talked before. You sort of become desensitized to this kind of stuff to a certain extent. But it was still. I still felt it was like, yeah, that's for me. It's getting on a bit of a line for the context in which it was shown, and that's part of the sort of the debate that started to come about as a result of this was some people were asking, is this appropriate content for video games to deal with? Not just with Last of Us 2, with the violence there against women, but also with Detroit, you've got child abuse essentially there. And these are pretty heavy subjects, right? For video games. Now, of course, the argument against that, of course, is that video games are art. It's an art form. They're entertainment. And you see this kind of thing in movies all the time, and you wouldn't really question it in a movie. You can decide to watch the movie or not. same as you can decide to play the games or not. So I don't think that it's an issue that it's not appropriate content for video games. I think it goes more to the way in which the trailers were presented. And this goes back to an issue which I've had with E3 the last little while and other press conferences, where we've got to the point where all these press conferences are just trailer, one after the other.
True.
And it used to be that you used to have the devs come up and they'd give a very long monologue and talk about the game, and then they'd show a bit of it. And you got through far less games that way, and then people complained and said there's too much talking at these press conferences. But I think we've gone too far the other way now, where there's no setup, there's no context for anything. You just get one trailer right after the other. And that's okay if it's sort of a montage of similar ones, but when you have games with very different tones and very serious tones. I mean, in this case, you had Spider-Man, so you've got a comic book kind of lighthearted thing, right into Detroit Become Human, where you've got a girl being abused by her father. And just that switch of those two tones within the space of 30 seconds, I think that was a bit jarring for people. And personally, I think what needs to happen is we can find a happy medium here somewhere where you allow some of these trailers to have a little room to breathe, give them some context, give them some setup. You don't have to have a 10-minute developer monologue there, but just enough to recognize that there needs to be a transition here for different tone pieces.
Right? I totally agree. Going from, oh my god, Spider-Man, it's so great, to a 20-year-old helpless girl getting her arms broken with a ball-peen hammer is definitely a little jarring. Right? Absolutely. I do agree with that. I will say that I felt the most uncomfortable watching the Detroit Become Human. Implied child abuse to me is worse than pretty much anything else I saw. But I completely agree that, given a few minutes to let the previous trailers breathe and to give an intro to the next one, at least just explain the scene we're about to see, I find would go a long way when it comes to the trailers being received. And like you said, I mean, no one says boo about this stuff with movies, but, imagine you saw a trailer for the Care Bears, and then right after that you saw a trailer for, Pennywise. They're completely different things. Right. And, it's received a little differently at that time. So, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I think there was an argument made that, the devs aren't going to like this either. Like, do you think that Spider-Man, Insomniac were happy to have their game up against something with a completely different tone like that, which kind of destroys what they'd done? So I think just a bit more thought into these things, and a little more context or setup to some of these where needed. Video games as an art are still evolving. It's still a fairly young medium. We're still figuring things out. But I think this is an area where video games can grow a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and again, to liken to the movies, right? I mean, some of these AAA games cost more than a movie to make, but they're also making more than the Hollywood industry right now. So, I mean, they have the resources, the time to put into this, but like you said, it's still growing, and I think hopefully we'll see a bit of a shift going forward.